All right, we are live on a Saturday edition, a bit of a rise and grind edition. Rob's got to head into work. Lots of snow coming your way up there in New England area, especially that Buffalo and Miami game, which we will get to that. But first of all, Rob, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, man. We got a couple of slates to talk about today. We got the Saturday slate, which is always a nice time of year, and we'll get to talking about the main slate too. But yeah, that Miami Buffalo game, they're going to get some significant snowfall tonight, so that's going to make things interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And as you can see, hopefully the sound quality and the video quality is a little bit better. I figured out how to use my phone. Shout out to one of my buddies, Brian, who helped me figure out that do not use your laptop camera. We'll get you set up though, Rob. Don't worry. But yeah, hopefully the quality is a little bit better. Hopefully people don't scroll past this when they see it on Twitter. And here's something I'm going to do. I'm a little ashamed to do it, but if you are watching this, a lot of people watch this after the fact. Make sure you like or subscribe to our channel. That does help us kind of get more visibility so more people can check this out. Eventually, we would like to make this a little bit bigger than it is. We're starting to get hit our stride here. So if you do like the show, we've helped you out. Make sure you help us out and give us a like or subscribe. And also make sure you check out Gridiron AI. Running a special right now. It's basically free throughout the playoffs. I keep saying that. I need to get the specifics on that. But if you go on and log in and sign up, there'll be some free trial stuff there for you. So player pool coming tomorrow. Make sure you look out for that. And we don't have a whole lot of time here, so let's jump right in. Saturday slate. I like this slate a lot. It's basically the Thanksgiving slate all over again. 3-game slate. We got Josh Allen head and shoulders above everybody else on the slate in terms of projection. But like we added earlier, weather might be an issue. So, Rob, you're the professional in terms of weather. Go ahead and tell us what you think about this game in terms of Miami heading into Orchard Park in a snowstorm.
Yeah, so I mean, the latest forecast, I got these lake effect snow bands are going to be moving over the Buffalo area, happening right now, and it's going to continue tonight and into tomorrow morning. So like Orchard Park area is forecasting at 6 to 12 inches of snow between tonight and tomorrow morning. So it's definitely going to be snowing during the game, but the question is, how hard is it going to be snowing during the game? And I mean, it's really going to be difficult to predict. So I'd say, when you're playing players from this game, do so with caution. I still have some interest in Josh Allen in this game, mostly because of what he can do with his feet. So if they're in a situation where they're having trouble throwing the ball, he can still get you there in the ground. So I think this might be a week where you could run out Josh Allen by himself, or maybe just a single stack. But I don't have a whole lot of interest in stacking this game heavily, mainly because of the forecast.
Yeah, and again, before the forecast, I'm a little less worried about weather. Generally, it has moved this total down a few points, so I do pay attention to that because that's going to affect projections. But you are going to get I think, a slight ownership discount on this game overall. I just wasn't really getting a whole lot of Tua, Josh Allen, etc. Mostly because of the divisional matchup and a couple of other factors. So people are going to force Josh Allen in anyway because that just seems like they don't want to miss out on that. But he does the upside score on him, and correct me if I'm wrong, the upside score is relative to a full main slate, not necessarily a small slate like this.
Correct.
Okay, so his upside score, if this were a full slate, would be he would have to score almost 40 points at his price tag to get into that $1 million lineup, or have a good shot at getting in that $1 million lineup. That's probably going to come down with the other quarterbacks on this. I just think it's going to be really hard with him to get to 30 points today, especially with the weather, with the matchup, with his elbow. They haven't been passing as much. So all those factors, I think, come into play. And I do think it's going to be an exciting game, but that's not the quarterback I want to go to. We'll go quickly through these position by position, just kind of giving you guys one person we like at each position. Mine, surprisingly, is Matt Ryan. So interesting stat. When you think of a favorable matchup, are they in the bottom half or top half of the league in terms of defenses against quarterbacks? When Matt Ryan faces a favorable matchup, someone in the bottom half of the league, he does score around 18 points. And on a slate like this, if he gets you 20 points, that's probably plenty as long as you hit elsewhere. So I'm going to be all over Matt Ryan tonight. And I'm interested to hear who I'm interested to hear who you like at the quarterback position if you're going to avoid that snow game.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I liked Matt Ryan, even if you have fair weather tonight in Buffalo, even ignoring the snowfall. For all the reasons you just mentioned, the Vikings have made some bad quarterbacks look really good this year, including my Mac Jones just a couple of weeks ago on Thanksgiving. So yeah, I love Matt Ryan. Vikings are 31st in the league in pass yards per attempt allowed, and they're 19th in the league in passing touchdowns allowed. So yeah, I like him a lot. And I think, if people are going to be hot on Jonathan Taylor, if Matt Ryan ends up getting more of the fantasy points through the air, and you wanted to fade Taylor, that would be a good way to get leverage. But yep, big fan of Matt Ryan too, and not so much any of the other quarterbacks. I was considering maybe get thrown in some Kirk Cousins because of the uncertainty with Josh Allen, but Josh Allen and Matt Ryan were definitely my guys this Saturday.
Yeah, I don't. I'm getting plenty of Kirk Cousins too in my initial runs. One thing to note is the Colts are like one of the best secondaries in the league in terms of limiting fantasy production, and they have been for over a large sample. So because of that, just be careful. I mean, Justin Jefferson is. I mean, if you can downgrade him, he's showing up in some of the research that I've done as a downgrade. What I think is, I think that the Vikings might try to beat the Colts through the ground. I think you might see a lot of Dalvin Cook. So moving over to running back, I really do like Dalvin Cook today. As I don't know that a lot of people will be on him, and it looks like running back ownership overall is going to be pretty spread out. And I also really like J.K. Dobbins. So those are the two running backs I'm going to be targeting, paying up a little bit for Dalvin Cook. He's 300 less than Nick Chubb. Or sorry, he is 500 less than Nick Chubb, who's the most expensive running back on the slate, and he is 300 less than Jonathan Taylor. So I don't really think people are going to be paying up just because you want to fit in some of these studs. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about Matt Ryan going back to quarterback. Excuse me. But people are kind of talking up Dalvin Cook a little bit this week. So Dalvin Cook and J.K. Dobbins are who I'm targeting. How do you feel about those two running backs today?
Yeah, I like J.K. Dobbins a lot. It probably even makes in some Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards got a fair amount of the snaps last week too. I think he was somewhere between 40 and 45%. So on a small slate, that's a way you can get different if you want to even go out with Edwards and Dobbins, because the Ravens are going to want to run the ball down the Browns' throat, and the Browns are a bit of a run funnel defense. They rank 32nd in the league in rush yards per attempt allowed. So they're at the bottom of the barrel, and they've also looks like they're 27th in the league in rush touchdowns allowed. So going up against a team that likes to run the ball, yeah, I like Dobbins and even Gus Edwards a lot here. And outside of that, I'm interested in maybe getting into some of the running backs in the Buffalo-Miami game. Just because of the snowfall, I think there's a chance maybe they try to get it done on the ground. And it could be tough to tackle people in the snow. Sometimes the running backs can get an edge, if they can get some open space there. So might have some interesting guys like Devin Singletary or James Cook, maybe even some Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, James Cook was kind of like our fantasy bubbles. Like we're like, oh, this is the week to play James Cook. I think he had like 20 opportunities the week before, and he kind of fell flat. I know I fell for it on a few lineups. So it could be like a little bit of like post hype, sneaky start to get James Cook involved, and especially if the weather's not going to be that great. Usually, snowy games are tougher for defenses than they are for offenses in terms of stopping the running game, just because. I don't know. I'm starting to talk above my pay grade here, but we have seen LaShawn McCoy do really well in a snowy game in Buffalo before. I remember that happened a few years ago where you could barely see the field or even the screen because it was snowing so hard. So we've seen some fantasy production.
That's what we could have tonight too.
Yeah. So James Cook might be a really, really fun play tonight. I really like this Saturday slate, especially with the snow. Let's get weird, Rob. All right. Wide receiver. Right off the bat, like I said before, Justin Jefferson, temper expectations. Stephon Diggs, temper expectations. He gets Xavier Howard, Stephon Diggs does, and Mike Clay from ESPN wrote that up as a really tough matchup. Also, Justin Jefferson and really the whole Vikings secondary is a bit of an avoid. But one thing we're not going to avoid is that Vikings secondary, which has been absolutely gashed. So you can fire up Michael Pittman, you can fire up Paris Campbell, and even a little bit more on the sneaky side is Alec Pierce. I think that all of them have very winnable matchups this week. So I'm all in on this Indianapolis wide receiver core, and give me all the Matt Ryan stacks today. Rob, you can talk me out of it if you want, but I might go full send with Matt Ryan in terms of Saturday slate. What do you think about wide receiver?
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I like all those indie wide receivers as well. And don't sleep on Ashton Doolin either. He's the wide receiver for there. He's going to get some snaps. He gets some air yards. And again, on these small slates, those are the kind of guys you want to target because you know there's going to be someone who's third or fourth on the depth chart that is going to be the person that gets you there in those big, large field tournaments. So I kind of like getting into some Ashton Doolin, Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman, like you mentioned, Paris Campbell. Yeah, but I mean, outside of that, it's pretty ugly wide receiver wise. That Cleveland Baltimore game has a really low total at 38.5. So it's going to be hard to find out who's going to get the points there. I think DPJ is probably going to be pretty popular. I think Mari Cooper might be a nice pivot since I don't think as many people will want to play him. And then again, buyer beware on any of the Miami or Buffalo receivers playing in that snow game tonight.
Yeah, it looks like people really want to kind of jam in some of these more expensive wide receivers that aren't in great matchups. I don't want to take on that ownership. I don't want to take on that risk with the snow. I don't want to take on the risk with the matchup. Even if we've seen these players like Stephon Diggs and Justin Jefferson win in tough matchups, I think you can pay down at wide receiver today and pay up at running back and get different and probably increase your expected value overall. So I really hope that this ownership stuff is accurate. I really hope people try to like force stuff today, because if so, I think we can be pretty profitable with just kind of following the projections. So that's the wide receiver position. Anybody else you want to mention here? Isaiah McKenzie on the last Thanksgiving type slate, the 3-game slate, was the guy you needed. I mean, it could happen. Like I said, Stephon Diggs does have a tough matchup. Can't really trust Gabe Davis, so don't be afraid to play Isaiah McKenzie is all I would say.
All right. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, someone in that game is going to get, some kind of production through the air. I just, it's going to be a small piece of the pie, but I'd toss in some Isaiah McKenzie at 4,100.
Yeah. At the tight end position, what we have here is TJ Hawkinson is going to be very popular against Indianapolis. Indianapolis is what kind of rank? They're pretty middling rank against tight ends in general. TJ Hawkinson has an amazing role. And like I said before, if Justin Jefferson is going to get a lot of attention from the Colts secondary, could open up some opportunities for TJ Hawkinson. So I don't hate that play, despite him being the most popular tight end play on the slate at 5,000, which is pretty expensive. Next up, no one's really sticking out here to me, but on these smaller slates, like game theory matters a little bit more. And no one's going to play Mike Gesicki. And I just think like in these winter wonderland games, like maybe the short intermediate type stuff where tight ends would be running might be a little bit more popular. So I could see Mike Gesicki at 3,400 making his way into some really good lineups, saves you some salary, and no one's really going to play him because no one likes to play Mike Gesicki. Anybody stick out to you? I need some help at tight end, Rob. So anybody you got here?
Yeah, I mean, I like that call a lot, actually, for the same reason you just mentioned. I was thinking more Dawson Knox on the other side, who might be a little bit more popular. Yeah, those are just two guys. If you want to get the ball in a short yardage situation into the end zone in a crappy weather game, I kind of like that thinking. How about Jelani Woods on Indianapolis? He's like the tight end too. I think he gets a decent snap share, I believe. He could potentially be a difference maker. Hit a big game a few weeks ago when Mo Alley-Cox was out. So I like him at 2,700 to get a little bit different in your large field tournament lineups.
Yeah, and going back to what you said about Dawson Knox, he is facing a Miami defense that is second to last in the league against the position. So there's another reason to play him. Not going to be as popular as TJ Hawkinson. David Njoku is going to be popular today against a Baltimore team that's, again, pretty middling against the tight end position. That Cleveland-Baltimore game is interesting. We have two quarterbacks here in Deshaun Watson and Tyler Huntley that can run the ball. Divisional game, though, between Cleveland and Baltimore, typically low scoring this late in the year. What's the weather like in that game? Do you have any idea?
Where is the game?
The game, it's in Cleveland.
I don't think weather should be an issue with that one. Okay. I'm sure it'll be cold.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's cold here in Philly. It doesn't look like anything. Looks like maybe a chance of snow a little bit later, but nothing too crazy. Um, all right, we got Mark Andrews is also on this slate with Tyler Huntley, so don't sleep on him. 5,700 is not too prohibitive, so just wanted to mention him just in case we we end up with a big Mark Andrews Tyler Huntley game, which we saw late in the year last year. But that's going to do it for me in terms of the Saturday slate. Ready to move on to the main slate?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So let's start off at quarterback. Let's take a look here at who the popular plays are going to be. Give me 1 second to filter here. Boom and boom. All right. Looks like the most popular play on the week is going to be Philadelphia on the road against Chicago. Over under in this game is a healthy 48 points. Implied team total for the Eagles is 28 points. You can stack them up. Chicago doesn't really, I mean, they were letting up production to Mike White in his first game. Turns out Mike White wasn't bad. But yeah, definitely an exploitable matchup here against Chicago. How do you feel about Jalen Hurts this week?
Yeah, I mean that Eagles offense as a whole feels like it's in a smash spot every week, no matter who they're playing. And we've seen Chicago's defense struggle this year. They haven't been as bad the last few weeks, but someone on the Eagles is probably going to light it up tomorrow. You're going to need someone on that offense, whether it's Jalen Hurts or Miles Sanders. But I think if I am running out Jalen Hurts, I might just be single stacking him with AJ Brown or Devontae Smith, and also Dallas Goedert is back this week. Supposedly he's expected to play. So yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with Jalen Hurts at 8,200. But I think we got some pretty good value options at the quarterback position this week, Nick. So a couple of guys that I'm looking at. Call me crazy, but and maybe even a homer here as a sneaky play. I'm kind of looking at Mac Jones this week against the Raiders. Mac Jones's salary is only $5,000, so he doesn't need much to get you there. And the Raiders have been pretty porous against quarterbacks this year. They rank dead last in passer rating allowed, and they're 27th in the league in pass touchdowns allowed. So I think this could be a game where Mac Jones, if he gets you 20 points at a salary of $5,000, that's enough to get you there. His upside score is 26 points. So I think somewhere in that 20 to 25 point range is certainly in the realm of outcomes for Mac Jones. So I kind of like him as a value play this week. How about you? You got any guys kind of in the lower tier range, say under $7,000 that you like this week?
Yeah, my favorite quarterback overall is under 7K. A lot of people are going to go Patrick Mahomes' way too. I don't know that you need to talk a whole lot about Patrick Mahomes against Houston. One thing that gives me pause on Patrick Mahomes is Houston is tough, quote unquote, tough against opposing pass offenses. We've said this every week. It's mostly because you can do whatever you want against them. Derek Stingley Jr. is out. So MVS, Mecole Hardman, Kadarius Toney is questionable to play. Juju Smith-Schuster, all in solid matchups. So Patrick Mahomes is a fine play, 8,100. I'm going to be going towards Dak Prescott, though, on the road against a Jacksonville team that ranks pretty poorly against opposing pass offenses, 26 against opposing quarterbacks. He is a matchup upgrade just because of that. And he could really get going here after they almost lost against Houston. So I look for the Cowboys to come out fired up. Jacksonville is a little bit tougher against the run than they are against the pass, so a little bit of a funnel there. At 6,200 in a game that could shoot out for sure at a 47 over under 26 point implied team total for the Cowboys. I really, really like Dak Prescott. He might be my favorite play at the quarterback position. How do you feel about Dak this week?
Yeah, I like that too. I like Trevor Lawrence on the other side. I have like a sneaking feeling that the Jags might be competitive in this game. I think Trevor Lawrence might be starting to find his stride as a quarterback in this league. So I like either one of those guys. At 6,000 for Lawrence, 6,200 for Dak Prescott. So something just occurred to me. I didn't realize Mike White had been ruled out. Just seeing in my projections here that Zach Wilson is now the starter for the Jets. I was really looking forward to playing Mike White against the Lions. And now that Zach Wilson is starting, dare we talk ourselves into throwing some Zach Wilson lineups into the mix at 5,100 against this Lions team that's allowed some pretty big games to quarterbacks this year. Do you want any piece of the mess that is Zach Wilson?
I'm like actively rooting against him and at all times. He's just one of those players for me. Baker Mayfield's another one. Zach Wilson specifically, right now, here's an interesting stat that kind of sums up how I feel about Zach Wilson. So, Vegas markets, like player prop markets, Garrett Wilson's receiving prop opened at 55.5. So Garrett Wilson's was getting his player prop would open at in around 62.5 to 64.5 range with Mike White. So Vegas is reacting to Wilson coming in about 11 to 15% dip with Zach Wilson under center. And I think that is probably about the difference between him and Mike White. Can he get there against Detroit? Probably. I would really like to take a look at Zach Wilson's games because he was winning. He was winning with the Jets when he was the starter before things kind of the wheels fell off. So can he get there? Sure. I'm not gonna be going there. It is the best matchup though. I will say that. I need to think about that a little bit more. I might talk myself into more Zach Wilson, but as of right now, I'm not upgrading him. If I do, he will probably show up in a lot of my lineups. So that's one I'm gonna have to wrestle with over the next day or so. I don't know if I can do it. I really don't, but we will see. Anybody else at the quarterback position that you like?
Probably have a little bit of Justin Fields this week. I think if the Bears can make that game competitive, it'll be because of him. So 7,400 with his explosive playability. I'm willing to take some shots there.
Yeah, and I think we need to mention Justin Herbert as well. He is going to be kind of lost in the shuffle here a little bit. I think 7,200 is like a weird price tag, like kind of right there in the middle where it's expensive, but all of his receivers are in awesome matchups. He's got all of his weapons. Finally, reports are that he's feeling better. Stefania Bell out of ESPN's like their injury expert. She's got like an Ivy League degree in sports science and physical therapy, and says that typically like this is the time where his rib injury should be feeling better, and reports are that that's happening. I think he looked a lot better in that last game, and he gets Tennessee at home, which Tennessee is just absolutely awful against the quarterback position, 31st. He's not projecting to be super high owned. I do think that that's going to change as some of these content producers start pumping him up a little bit. So I'll have plenty of Justin Herbert double stacks this week. Really fun game to stack up as well, especially if Traylon Burks is going to be back out of the concussion protocol for sure. Also, we'll get to this. Let's go ahead and move to running back. I think the Chargers run defense has gotten a lot better recently. They're one of the matchups to avoid on ESPN's matchup charts, which throws some cold water on Derrick Henry, where this whole season we've kind of been targeting the Chargers. So that's just interesting to me. I don't know if that's really actionable. I think I'll just kind of let the projections do what they do there. I don't think that I will downgrade Derrick Henry at all, but I'll toss it to you here. Who do you like at the running back position this week?
I think I actually do kind of like Derrick Henry. He is going to be pretty popular though, which is my only concern. So you might not be getting a whole lot of leverage on him, but it is Derrick Henry season. People don't want to get run over by him in December. Someone else I got my eye on this week is Alvin Kamara. He's only 6,800. He's projecting pretty well too, and he also looks to be high owned, but I think for good reason. He's going up against Atlanta, who's kind of struggled against the run this year. They rank 22nd in the league in rushing touchdowns allowed, and they're kind of more middle of the pack in terms of rush yards per attempt allowed. Kamara is always a bit of a risky play. He's one of the more volatile running backs playing with Andy Dalton. He's probably good for another, one more boom game this year. It's got to come eventually. So I think this is a pretty good spot for him. 24 implied team total for the Saints this week, and they're also looks like a 4-point favorite at this time. So I'll probably be taking some shots at Alvin Kamara, even at his high ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the field, we're all getting a little bit sharper here. Atlanta does rank 28th against opposing running backs in terms of fantasy production. I'll have plenty of exposure to Alvin Kamara. I wish he was lower owned. It's 6,800 though at that implied team total against a really, really bad Atlanta team that's going to be trotting out that rookie quarterback Desmond Ridder. He should have an increased expectation in terms of being in scoring position. You got to expect at least a few turnovers from the rookie. which would bode well for Alvin Kamara, but he's going to be popular for sure. Another guy that's going to be really popular just with an absolutely absurd snap share at the running back position is James Conner. He's getting like CMC level usage. They're just running this guy into the ground. He's starting to get up there in age. He's never really had the cleanest bill of health, but against Denver, a Denver team as well that's pretty solid against opposing running backs. I think this is mostly price specific in terms of the projection you're getting at 6,900 and the snap share you're getting. I'm kind of fine fading these top two running backs in Alvin Kamara and James Conner. Do you have any James Conner love this week, or are we okay fading him at that high ownership?
Yeah, I mean, so the Broncos defense, I mean, the way to get by them has been on the ground this year. They ranked 23rd in the league in rush yards per attempt allowed, but they rank fourth in the league in rush touchdowns allowed. So, they're giving up some chunk plays, but they're not giving up a lot of actual touchdowns. They've been a great defense all year. The implied team total is 36.5 points. The Cardinals are going to be probably going out there with Colt McCoy. So I think that was a reason I was going to fade him this week, especially if he's going to be popular at 25%. Someone you can get to, though, who's even cheaper, actually, and lower owned at 11%, also in a great matchup, is Miles Sanders, who absolutely just went off last week. Again, we were talking about this Eagles offense earlier with Jalen Hurts. Someone on this team is going to go off and have a big game. And Miles Sanders is certainly a possibility there. I like him a lot at only 11% owned. The Bears rank 31st in the league in rush touchdowns allowed to running backs, and they rank 30th in the league in rush yards per attempt allowed. So if the Eagles want to get it done on the ground here, they can absolutely do it with Miles Sanders. So I love him at 6,500 this week.
Yeah, and he's probably my favorite play at the running back position, Miles Sanders. I do think that the Eagles will kind of impose their will a little bit against this Bears team. It also could be a competitive game. I mean, honestly, you never know this late in the season. And Miles Sanders at 6,500, I have his projection boosted up to around 20 points, which is really, really solid at that price tag. Another guy that really the only other guy that the optimizer likes more than Miles Sanders is Zonovan Bam Knight at 5,300. He's just coming in at a clean 17-point projection for me, which seems really, really high. But apparently the experts around the industry think that he is kind of the bell cow back, especially with Zach Wilson in. I think they're projecting more of a run-heavy scheme against a Detroit team that is actually pretty solid against the run. So I might temper that projection down a little bit. You have him around 14 points. I think that's probably a little bit more reasonable. He is really good, fresh legs. He hasn't been playing all year. Really cool stories on him at night. Definitely has some juice, as we like to say. But I do not want to be overexposed to him because, like I said, you beat Detroit through the air, and they're actually pretty solid against the run. They've shut down some pretty solid running backs this year. So yeah, definitely like Miles Sanders a lot. How do you feel about Bam Knight? I got to throw some cold water on him, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's okay. I liked him a lot better with when Mike White was starting at quarterback at 5,300. Was absolutely willing to take some shots there, thinking the Jets would be able to move the ball down the field. I think at 18% ownership, though, the fact that Zach Wilson's playing, I don't like him as much, so I don't think I'll have as much of him as I otherwise would. But yeah, I think at 5,300, it's hard not to roll out Zonovan Knight against the Lions defense.
Yeah. Another interesting one I know you'll want to comment on is Josh Jacobs with, it seems like, torn calf muscle and broken hand and all kinds of stuff. He's still projecting really, really well at 8,100 against your the hometown heroes, the New England Patriots, who rank second against opposing defenses, against opposing running backs. Going to be pretty popular as well. I'm okay fading Josh Jacobs, and I'm not a homer. I assume you're not really going to be into Josh Jacobs this week either.
No, I'm fading him completely. The Pats have been great against running backs this year. They've only allowed 3 rushing touchdowns to running backs this year, and I think one of them was last week to James Conner. So, I mean, yeah, he could have a decent game, but at 8,100 and his ownership's only 15%. That's not terribly high. But at 8,100, I just don't think he's going to get you there, especially, if his health is going to be in question. It seems like that he's been questionable every week, but it hasn't seemed to slow him down. So I don't know if I'd be as concerned with that. But the Pats have been stiff against running backs, so I'm willing to fade him at 8,100. How about this? I got another one for you, Nick. Carolina Panthers going up against your Pittsburgh Steelers. In 3 of the last 4 weeks, the Panthers have ran the ball 46 times. And in 2 consecutive weeks have ran the ball 46 times. So I like Dante Foreman a lot here. And if you really wanted to get different, maybe you could even throw in some Chuba Hubbard, who's been getting some of those rushing attempts as well. But at 5,400, I like Dante Foreman against, I'd say, and you might know this better than me, a middling rush defense in the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's not like the highest total you want to see. Over and unders at 37.5 points right now. But just based on how much the Panthers are running the ball, if Dante Foreman can get going, he could definitely return his value at 5,400. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't hate the play. I'll probably have a little bit of that. I'm not going to go out of my way to play Dante Foreman at home against Pittsburgh with that team total so low. I just think like the way you beat the Steelers is through the air, and I think that if they are going to move the ball, the Steelers defense has really come on lately as well, much like the New England defense has, especially with TJ Watt returning. So not really going to target the Pittsburgh defense with Sam Darnold at the quarterback position. But I wouldn't blame you for targeting the volume there at 5,400 at all. It does look like, speaking of New England, Ramondre Stevenson, I saw some optimism. Can you give the people a little bit? If he's in, then he's kind of interesting. If he's out, then who do you want from New England backfield?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of question who's going to be playing for New England tomorrow. I mean, not just Ramondre Stevenson, but Damian Harris and Jacoby Myers are both in question. I think I saw that Stevenson did return to practice yesterday. Excuse me. So I think that bodes well for his availability. It feels like he probably will play. If he doesn't, if Damian Harris plays, I think Damian Harris is a great option, but he is also questionable. So if Harris and Stevenson don't play, their backup running backs, Kevin Harris, and I think, was it Pierre Strong was the name of the other guy who we saw have a pretty big game against the Cardinals last week. You could take some shots on either of those guys. I'm assuming they're going to be fairly cheap. But that'll definitely be something to keep an eye on, since the Raiders are definitely a team you can move the ball on the ground with. And like I said earlier, I think Mac Jones should be able to move the ball against that defense this week. So I don't think it matters who's starting at running back for the Pats. I think any of them will be a great option. It's just a matter of monitoring the injury report and the inactives list to determine who it's going to be.
Yeah, if I'm going to be paying really close attention to this, because Las Vegas is absolutely awful against running backs, and I want to nail who the pass catching back is going to be. And if Ramondre Stevenson is in, and I have a good sense of I mean, if him practicing yesterday really brings some optimism for me. And like I said, I think that they will put a lot on his shoulders if he's active. I don't think that he'll be limited at all. Basically. Especially since he practiced yesterday. But if he is out, I've heard like similar amount of pessimism as I have Ramondre Stevenson optimism with Damian Harris. So I'm not sure that he's going to be active. Even if he is, we got Pornbot in the chat alert. That means we've made it, Rob. So we'll boot that guy here in a second. But I'm not as interested in Damian Harris if he is active and Ramondre Stevenson is not, mostly because he doesn't catch passes. I do like Pierre Strong if Ramondre Stevenson is out, because he did fill that pass catching role. But kind of a few dart throws there. But I mean, if you nail that, then I think you'll be rewarded for sure, especially if one of those lower price guys get a lot of volume. Some other guys that I like at the position, man, running back is kind of, it seems like there for a while that there were like 4 or 5 guys you just had to play, like Kenneth Walker, Ramondre Stevenson, Josh Jacobs, like those were your running backs. Then you just figured it out, everything else out elsewhere. Sorry. One guy I'm getting a little bit more of than I cared to is Najee Harris. He is, I think, in a matchup to avoid against the Carolina Panthers defense in a low team total. So I'm going to be, like I said, tempering expectations there. But one guy I do like is Isaiah Pacheco on the road against Houston. Like I said, everybody has run all over Houston all year. They're the second worst team against running backs in terms of fantasy production. You like either of those guys? Najee Harris, who I'm getting a lot of right now at 5,700, and Isaiah Pacheco sitting at 5,900.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see what Najee Harris's expected fantasy points look like. I don't think I have a stat for that for running backs, but I feel like he projects pretty well on a week-to-week basis, mostly because of his volume. And we know like he just really hasn't had the ceiling this year. He's been good for what, maybe 12 to 16 points a game. So he, at that kind of exposure you're getting him at, it's probably because he's probably got a pretty safe floor. But I just don't think he has the ceiling to get you there in a big tournament. So he's not someone I'm interested in that low total game. Isaiah Pacheco, I like a lot. The Texans seem to have been better at stopping the pass than they have the run. But I mean, we know this Chiefs offense can kill you in a number of different ways. I think you also have to give some respect to Jerick McKinnon, who was pretty much a slate breaker last week. He had a monster game, catching the ball out of the backfield. So at 5,200, you could maybe take some shots in him. But I think I'm in agreement with you. If they're going to move it on the ground, it should be Pacheco, who should be raking in the rushing fantasy points for the Chiefs this week. So I don't think that's a bad play.
Yeah, I'm also going to throw some names out here to you and just let me know how you feel about any of them. I'm just a glutton for punishment. I'm going to play DeAndre Swift this week after he let me down last week. He's projecting for around 14 points at 5,700. No one's going to play him. It's a bad matchup against the Jets, but it's DeAndre Swift, explosive. What do you think about DeAndre Swift, actually? Before we move on to someone else.
I mean, I have his ownership at under 1%, at 0.94%. So I love where your head's at. I mean, you want to get different, that's the way. We know DeAndre Swift has a ceiling. The Jets have a pretty good pass defense. So, I mean, hey, could Jared Goff just be checking it down to Swift, or could they get the ball going on the ground? Absolutely. He's been getting a lot more work lately. The Jets are more middling against running backs. So I don't hate it. I'll probably have a little bit of DeAndre Swift this week. It's a little bit of a gamble, but like where your head's at.
Yeah, the next guy up on my list in terms of exposure is Austin Eckler at home against Tennessee. The guy's just balling. Tennessee is a tough matchup for running backs, but Eckler is not your typical running back. He's more of a running back plus wide receiver, and I think he's going to get plenty of production. At 8,500, it is tough to fit him. And if you wanted to play Austin Eckler, you could pair him with my buddy Latavius Murray, who I just can't get away from. But I will be getting away from him this week because he's one of the most popular plays on the slate against an Arizona team that does give up a lot of rushing production. But Latavius Murray will probably have his 21 carries for 67 yards and not be on any winning lineups. So I'm out on him. How do you feel about Travis Etienne, actually?
I'm probably going to fade Travis Etienne this week against that Dallas Cowboys offense. If the Jaguars are going to compete in this game, they're probably going to need to do so through the air. So he is someone I'm probably going to be fading. I think he's pretty cheap at $6,000, but I think there's some better options this week at running back. It's just not really a great matchup in any sense. So I'll probably be avoiding him for the most part.
Yeah. And then the last one I want to bring up here, it seems that the Eagles' run defense has gotten a little bit better since Jordan Davis came back off of injury. But David Montgomery is in what appears to be a pretty solid matchup against a Philly defense that's easier to beat on the ground than through the air. So David Montgomery should get plenty of run at 6,300. I have him for right around 14 and a half points. So don't forget about him. He's easy to forget about, David Montgomery is, because he's a boring player. All right, let's move on to wide receiver where things get interesting today. The most popular plays are mostly going to come in this, Detroit Jets game, I think. People are going to want to play a few of these receivers. Actually, the most popular play on the week is Chris Olave, who I have is a matchup downgrade. I'm not going to have any of them. I'm full fading Chris Olave. Do you like Chris Olave this week?
I haven't been looking at Chris Olave a whole lot, so he's not someone I've been particularly high on. What is his salary this week? 6,500. Yeah. The matchup doesn't look terrible, but what you're saying, you got a little bit deeper knowledge there about his cornerback matchup. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, AJ Terrell is back healthy. I think the first few weeks he was back, he wasn't at full health, but he should be on Chris Olave in this game. And I think they played earlier, and it was not a good game for Chris Olave. I'll have to check on that, but a few people that I trust wrote him up as not a great play, and I love to see that I'm not on him and everybody else is. And in this specific case, I'm not really scared of fading Chris Olave, but another guy that really hard to fade, especially even against your New England Patriots. Another popular play on the week will be Devontae Adams. How do you feel about him this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard for me not to be biased. That's something I always struggle with in DFS or any kind of sports gambling when my home team is involved. But I cannot pay up $9,000 for Devontae Adams this week. With Belichick going up against Josh McDaniels, the Patriots defense has been solid. They held DeAndre Hopkins in check last week, even with Colt McCoy at quarterback, who didn't have a terrible game, by the way. So I just think it's going to be really hard for Devontae Adams to get there going up against this Patriots defense. Like you said, he's always hard to fade, but I just can't justify spending $9,000 for him this week.
Yeah, that is a pretty steep price tag, and what does not appear to be a great matchup. But it is Josh McDaniels' revenge game. Have you considered that?
I have, but I think it's going to be more like Bill Belichick revenge game for Josh McDaniels leaving.
Yeah, I don't know. There's probably a narrative out there about Bill Belichick like absolutely dummying his former coaches. I think that's a thing, right? When he plays his people from his former coaching tree, he typically shows them who the boss is. I don't know. That's probably not very analytical.
I think actually the opposite is true. I feel like his opposing coaches have kind of had his number.
Yeah.
Most recently.
I do remember Matt Patricia as like the Detroit coach. Like they beat them like in a year where the Lions were like really, really bad. I think I remember that actually. Now that you mention it.
And the Dolphins when they had who was their coach last year?
Brian Flores.
Brian Flores. That's right. He took down Belichick in their first matchup. So
yeah, another popular play on the week purely because he's a $700 discount to Devontae Adams, who projects really, really well at 20 points on the week, is Jamar Chase. T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd are both expected to play, so keep that in mind. But Joe Burrow will have his full complement of weapons outside of Hayden Hurst, I believe. Joe Mixon's back. Jamar Chase is a baller, so I'll have plenty of them. But yeah, how do you feel about that Cincinnati Tampa Bay game? That's an interesting game we haven't talked much about yet.
Yeah, that is an interesting game, and like seeing the over under at 45 points, I kind of, Vegas seems to think this could go either way. Could be kind of on the lower side. It could have the potential to shoot out. That's a tough one. I mean, when I'm playing the Bengals, I want to know that it's going to be a good scoring environment, right? Because you never know who Joe Burrow is going to go to. Is it going to be Higgins? Is it going to be Chase? Tyler Boyd can even go off sometimes. In an over-under game at 45 points going up against the Bucs, whose defense has shined a few times this year, it kind of puts me on edge. If a guy like Jamar Chase is going to be able to return his value, he's not my favorite play of the week, but I'll probably take some shots.
Yeah, in terms of passing games, I'm just going to keep the Cincinnati Bengals kind of right where the aggregate projections have them. However, I am going to be downgrading the Tampa Bay pass game. Despite all the injuries, the Cincinnati secondary has really, really been a good unit against opposing wide receivers. So Chris Godwin's going to be popular. I'm not going to be on him. Mike Evans is going to be popular. I'm not going to be on him. I'm just not really into that pass game. So if anything, I might take Tampa Bay is a mess, man. Tom Brady is a mess. I mean, that's your boy. I know he brought you a lot of happiness throughout your adult life and even your childhood, I'm sure. 20 years, you said that. Rob, that was we got to pause for a second. That was an all-time Patriots quote that you said in the chat, that this is a different few years for you because it used to be that it's fun to watch football for a whole season because it used to be that the season didn't start until the AFC Championship game. And as a Steelers fan, that made me so incredibly upset because it's true. It's true.
Yeah, it would. I mean, they made the AFC champ. It was like 8 years in a row. They made the AFC champ 8 straight years.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that was a fun run. They won their first Super Bowl when I was 10 years old. So yeah, it was a fun 20 years. But it's nice to enjoy the regular season now. Every game matters. Before that wasn't the case.
Oh my goodness.
But I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, this is not the Tom Brady of old. This Bucs team, you keep waiting for them to put it together. All the receivers are healthy, and it's still just not happening. So I'm fine with fading any of those receivers this week. Um, how about going back to you were talking about Dak Prescott earlier. I think CD Lamb is in an awesome spot this week, 7,300. He's probably my favorite wide receiver on the whole slate. His ownership, I don't think, is through the roof. He will be popular though, but I think I'll probably be above the field this week on CD Lamb. I think let's see, I think I got his ownership right around 15%. 14%. So yeah, I'll probably be way above that this week. How are you feeling about CD Lamb? Are you going to be running him out there with your Dak Prescott lineups?
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely going to be overweight on CD Lamb. And really the whole pass game. Dalton Schultz is also in consideration. Noah Brown, Michael Gallup. I mean, I feel like we could get a Michael Gallup game here. We haven't had one yet this season, but he's coming off a pretty gruesome ACL injury. But at 4,400, like fire up some Michael Gallup this week. Other than the Cowboys receivers, the other receiving core that I'm into is the Chargers wide receivers against Tennessee, which they're the worst secondary against wide receivers in terms of fantasy production. So Mike Williams isn't going to sneak by anybody, but Keenan Allen, I mean, 12 targets in his last game. He's back, baby. So I love the Justin Herbert double stacks with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Gerald Everett is in a good spot. He wears the visor. He wears number 7. He's a tight end. Like, I'm going to play him. If you wear a visor at the tight end position, I'm going to play you. That's it. So yeah, I mean, I really think that people are on the wrong stuff this week, more so than other weeks. So I'm really excited for this slate, especially because I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'm just going to let the projections that we have and that we use kind of do the talking and pick my spots. And definitely the Chargers and the Cowboys are 2 spots that I'm definitely interested in as people go elsewhere on this slate. Go ahead.
I got a name drop for you. So this is funny. Like this will at times happen. When I'm running my projections, I just download the rosters from my database and kind of, let the programs do its thing. So this week I'm going through my wide receivers, and for Dallas, did you know that T.Y. Hilton is on the Dallas Cowboys now?
I did see, mostly because I kind of am following the Odell Beckham saga. T.Y. Hilton got signed, and there was one other veteran that got signed as well.
James Washington.
By the Cowboys. But there was another team that was considering Odell, and they went with another just absolute dust ball. But yeah, T.Y. Hilton recently got signed by the Dallas Cowboys. Not sure why. He hasn't really been able to play football for the past 4 years, it seems, but good for him.
3,200 this week, not even the min salary. So DraftKings showing the respect.
They definitely know something we don't then. So I really like I'm going to talk myself into Zach Wilson. I do like Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore this week against the Detroit secondary, just from a raw projection standpoint. If you remove the name Zach Wilson, he's projecting fine. I might just need to kind of just grin and bear it. Elijah Moore, we could see a game out of him. I think one way I might do this is he's at 3,600. I might get exposure to this matchup through Elijah Moore because he's not going to be, he's going to be somewhat popular too. I just hate it. I need to think about this Jets game a little bit.
So I think the one thing the Jets game has going for them, the Vikings are ranked last in the league in air yards allowed. So teams have been airing it out against that defense. And I think Zach Wilson, he likes to throw the ball deep. So that kind of bodes well. Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson, they make up the majority of the air yard share on the Jets. So, you can't not take some shots there, but I don't think Garrett Wilson's caught a touchdown pass from Zach Wilson this year. There's a lot to think about for sure, but it's just such a good matchup.
Like, who does Zach Wilson target? Because all of his receivers are pissed off at him. I think he really likes Corey Davis, who's going to be out. So that's one thing for Garrett Wilson and or Elijah Moore. I know that Tyler Conklin was tight end 1 while Zach Wilson was playing, so consider him. But mostly Zach Wilson just pisses off his wide receivers, and hopefully that gets. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna
Braxton Berrios.
Braxton Berrios. Don't get me started. Okay. Let me know about what you think about Nelson Aguilar. I really like him this week at 3,400. At potentially the New England wide receiver 1 with some injury situations going on there. Also, Kendrick Bourne is popping a lot against a Las Vegas team that's pretty poor against the pass. And like you said, Mac Jones might be in a solid spot, but I don't know that I'll have a whole lot of Mac Jones, but I definitely will be sprinkling in some of his wide receivers in this matchup. Who do you like in the Patriots wide receiver core?
Yeah, I mean, this is a general rule of thumb, and it's been this way for the better part of the last decade, with the exception of Julian Edelman. There's a general rule of thumb in any kind of fantasy. I tend to stay away from New England receivers. They are far more volatile than the average wide receiver. Wide receiver is already a volatile position. It's just so hard to determine who it's going to be this week, and if it's going to be anyone. We were pretty high on the Pats running game. I am kind of high on Mac Jones this week, but they like to spread the ball out. Nelson Aguilar, if Devontae Parker and Jacoby Myers are out, I think at the very least you can count on Nelson Aguilar getting a very high snap share this week. So he is going to be on the field and he is going to have opportunities. You're not going to have to pay much for him though. If he's the wide receiver one, he's only $3,400. So, absolutely worth taking some shots on. But again, just buyer beware. I think Tyquan Thornton, they've been trying to get him the ball a lot. It hasn't happened yet. But his snap share has been increasing, and I think if Myers and Parker are out, he's the min salary at $3,000. He's a very dynamic player. I'm really excited about him. So trying to remove the bias here, but I might be willing to take some shots at Tyquan Thornton at 3,000. But again, just buyer beware. Always beware of those Patriots receivers. Extremely volatile.
Yeah, and to kind of maybe the way I'm thinking about this is I do like the Jacksonville wide receivers, Zay Jones and Christian Kirk, and what appears to be a pretty tough matchup. But Dallas has been a good defense in real life terms, but they have let up right around league average amount of fantasy points to Zay Jones and Christian Kirk. So I'm not going to be downgrading them in what might seem like a bad matchup. I do think it's not a great matchup for Trevor Lawrence, but like you said before, you're not too worried about him just because he's been playing well lately. So if I'm going to do like a stack and then like run back, I'm okay with the Jacksonville Dallas game stacking that on both sides with both offenses involved in that game. I do think that is one I really like to maybe shoot out and be the highest scoring game on the slate. So just keep that in mind. I also really like Juju Smith-Schuster and Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy just absolutely balled out last week. He does have Brett Rypien throwing him the ball, so let's keep that in mind. But Juju Smith-Schuster gets Houston, and like I said, Derek Stingley Jr., a solid corner, is out. So he's the guy that I want in Kansas City. Some others here, Drake London. We're going to keep Drake London in mind. He's been burning me all year, but we got a new quarterback, and Desmond Ritter's calling card is kind of like his deep ball prowess. He's not the most accurate quarterback, but I think he will be willing to throw the ball downfield more than Marcus Mariota. He's not going to run quite as much as Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder will, but keep Drake London in mind. Don't forget about him at 4,700. And will probably be a pretty gross game against New Orleans, but yeah, any love for any of those guys I just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, with the Chiefs, I'm interested in anybody. I'm not going to target any one particular player just because you never know who it's going to go to. Juju Smith-Schuster looks pretty good. It looks like Kadarius Toney's going to play this week. So I like him a lot. And I'm right there with you on the Jacksonville receivers too. I'm probably going to have plenty of them. And someone we haven't talked about yet, Amon-Ra St. Brown against the Jets and Sauce Gardner. I'm probably going to be fading him. It's a terrible matchup for him. That cornerback on the Jets, he's a rookie. He's been having a great year. But I do think that the Detroit Lions are going to stay competitive in this game. Their implied team total is 22 points, which isn't awful against a pretty good Jets defense. I might take some shots at DJ Chark. Teams have been airing it out against the Jets this year. They ranked 25th in the league in air yards allowed. And DJ Chark has been getting a good amount of the air yards, 35% air yard share in games that he's played this year. So I think he might be a nice pivot off of Amon-Ra St. Brown, who people like to play. Even in the tough matchup, his ownership's at 12%. You can get DJ Chark at under 1% this week. I don't know if it'll be that low, but he won't be a popular play.
Yeah, and I think in the last 2 weeks playing Jameson Williams might have been a bit of a fish play. He did have the touchdown last week. Really cool moment. Good to see that he's well on his way to getting back to full speed and being a really impact player in the league. I think he's going to be a really exciting player in his career. I mean, he went once. I think he had like 2 snaps, 6 snaps, and then you would assume that they're going to ramp him up a little bit. So similar to DJ Chark, I think it's starting to get to the point if you want to be a week early on Jameson Williams, this might be a good spot despite a bad matchup. But He'll probably line up in the slot a little bit more, which is where you kind of want to attack the Jets defense more than on the perimeter. I'm probably not really going to be on this pass offense much, which I think this game is going to kind of be a little bit of a slog. It's Detroit against the Jets with Zach Wilson. Detroit's on the road. Yeah, I'm talking myself out of Zach Wilson. You guys have heard me all of the stages of grief with Zach Wilson in this show. So we're going to move on to tight end because I know you got to get going here, Rob. I'll let you have the floor here first. Who do you like at tight end this week?
I think I might be willing to go back to the Greg Dulcich again. I think he's going to be popular this week against the Arizona Cardinals, notoriously the worst defense against tight ends of all time. They're ranked 32nd in the league this year. Dulcich has been, he's been getting the most, I feel like, consistency out of the Denver receiving core, kind of setting aside that Jerry Jeudy blow-up game last week. I guess the Brett Ripon starting could bring down his value a little bit, but I'll probably have some Greg Dulcich this week. Another guy we already talked about was Dalton Schultz. Pretty much, again, any of the Cowboys pass catchers this week, him included. The Jaguars, let's see, they ranked 21st in the league in pass touchdowns allowed to tight ends this year. So that's a good matchup for him. And I also like Tyler Conklin. He has had some pretty big games when Zach Wilson has played. He seems to be the only receiver on the Jets who has been reliable. He's only 3,100 this week against the Lions, who rank last or tied for last in the league in touchdowns allowed to tight ends. So those are some of the guys I'm looking at.
Yeah, so a lot of people are going to like Travis Kelce this week, even at the big time price tag there. He's just head and shoulders above everybody else against Houston, which, I mean, if they want Travis Kelce to have a big game, Travis Kelce will have a big game. So I'm not as into him as the field. I'm more into, like you said, Greg Dulcich and Dalton Schultz. I like Dalton Schultz a little bit more just because that Brett Ripien nonsense that we might run into with Greg Dulcich. If there's going to be a letdown spot, it's probably at the hands of Brett Ripien. Cole Kmet is going to be popular against Philly. That game could shoot out a little bit, probably a team total situation over under, kind of inflating his projection a little bit. And then the GOAT Chig and Conquo is just taking the nation by storm. People are going to be playing him at his price tag, which is at 3,100. So he's my favorite punt play on the week, but I don't know that I'll be punting as much as I usually do at the position. Just because I think it's going to be tough to keep up with Travis Kelce, who is almost a lock for a touchdown in this game. I also really like Gerald Everett. He's in a really good matchup against Tennessee at home. And Evan Ingram, I'm downgrading him. I'm not going to have any Evan Ingram even after his huge game last week, which is a little scary because we like we like the passing offense in Jacksonville outside of Evan Ingram. Dallas has just been really, really solid against the tight end position. So he's a matchup downgrade for me. Anybody else you like here before we full send it and then you can head to work?
I think when it comes to the tight end position, it's so volatile. So I'm willing to sprinkle in a little bit of everyone this week. That's probably what I'll do. And if I do go with Travis Kelce, I like to throw him in the flex position since he's pretty much a wide receiver anyways. And then throw a cheaper tight end in the tight end spot. So just some food for thought there.
Yeah, I think the reason you're seeing Chig and Travis Kelce is the highest owned is I think a lot of people are doing just that. Playing Travis Kelce is kind of like the wide receiver one in Kansas City and then punting tight end. Not a bad call, honestly. For defense, play the Saints against Desmond Ridder. Next question. Anybody else you like at defense before we move on?
The Broncos against the Cardinals. I think the Broncos are only 2,700 this week. I think they'll be popular, but it's a great matchup. So I'll probably have plenty of lineups with the Broncos.
All right. I'll toss it to you then. What's your full send stack of the week?
Full send stack of the week. Ooh. Well, I was gonna say my full send is CeeDee Lamb. So why don't we just go ahead and say CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott stacks this week are gonna be my go-to.
All right, that was gonna be mine. I was gonna say I'll give people a little bit more to that. I'll say my favorite way to stack that game up is Dak, CD, and Dalton Schultz, and then run it back with Christian Kirk. Good amount of a little bit chalk there, a little bit of contrarian play. I really think that game can shoot out. You can substitute Christian Kirk out for Zay Jones to save yourself some salary. You can substitute Christian Kirk out for Travis Etienne. I think he's in a solid spot this week, despite like what the matchup on paper might look like. So co-signing the full send of Cowboys Jags, I think that's really, really sharp. Go us. My secondary one I'll pivot to is Justin Herbert double stacks with some type of Tennessee bring back. I wouldn't force that though, but if it so happens that you get Chig Okonkwo in there or Treylon Burks, I wouldn't blame you. But I just think Justin Herbert's going to start dominating and showing why he was one of the favorites for MVP going into the season, despite some really bad luck and some health issues and not having his full supporting cast. All of that stuff is kind of taking care of itself. So those are my two favorite stacks right there. Anybody else you're going all in on this week?
I think I might go back to the Miles Sanders. Well, feels a little point chasey after the blow up game he had last week. But I think at the very least he's going to offer a nice floor this week at 6,500, and his ownership not being that high. I'm probably going to have, let's say, at least 50% of my lineups with Miles Sanders.
Ooh, I mean, we are really locked in together today. Miles Sanders is going to be my other full send. So let me get creative here. Let's see. There's got to be someone at the wide receiver position that I like. I wouldn't dare send Drake London. I'm not going to do that. I can't tie my name to Desmond Ridder this early. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to force another full send. I really like Miles Sanders this week. I definitely, I'll throw Austin Eckler in there as kind of like, don't forget him in your Justin Herbert stacks, because that is something that can work out for you. But otherwise, I don't have a ton of conviction at the running back position. If Ramondre Stevenson is healthy and we get word that his workload is going to be similar to what we've seen all season, I'm going to go ahead and full send your boy Ramondre Stevenson. But that's going to do it for us, and we will lock it up there so you can get out of here, Rob. Really appreciate you squeezing this in, a little rise and grind for the people. Good luck today on that 3-game slate. Good luck tomorrow on the main slate. Make sure you check us out on gridironai.com and at all the socials right above my head here. And make sure you like and subscribe. Let us know what you think about the sound quality. If it's too much, I'm still dialing it in. But yeah, I really appreciate it, Rob. Make sure you check him out. He'll be tweeting out from the Gridiron AI account on Twitter. He'll be tweeting out some optimal lineups, and I might get back on that train on Instagram. I've taken a little bit of break from Showdown. So good luck, everybody. Thanks for joining me, Rob, and have a good one.
Take care, guys.